Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining on the second CIUF meeting, Colorado Intermountain Urban Forestry Council. So we'll go around and introduce ourselves. The way I did it last time, and I think worked well, is that I'll call on you and let the next person know who's going to go up. So then it's not a surprise and you're not scrambling for your mouse and your mic. So we're just going to go through my screen. So first up is Brandon and second is Jeff Piper.
Morning, everyone. I'm Brandon Canwisher. I'm an arborist out in Grand Junction and a member of the local forestry board here.
Morning.
Morning, Brandon. So then after Jeff will be Rob Davis.
Good morning, everybody. I am new to this position and area. So my name is Jeff Piper. I am now working in the Tri-River area as a commercial horticulturist and natural resource specialist.
Awesome.
Nice to see you.
Welcome, Jeff. So after Rob will be Carl Meinecke.
Rob Davis, City Forester for the City of Grand Junction.
Welcome.
So after Carl will be Dana Karcher.
Hello, I'm Carl Meinecke, Town Arborist in Carbondale.
After Dana will be Matt Ermsom.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dana Karcher, and I'm a project developer with Davey Resource Group covering all of Colorado and a bunch of other states.
That's awesome.
Hi, Matt. After you will be Carolina.
Morning, everybody. I'm Matt Ermson. I'm an urban forestry planner with Planet Geo, the developers of Tree Plotter, and we do urban forestry consulting for municipalities all across the country.
Awesome. After Carolina will be Heather.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carolina Manriquez. I am a forester with the State Forest Service based out of Steamboat Springs, and we support our cities and municipalities with urban forestry as much as we can. So I'm happy to be here and yay for second meeting.
Thanks, Carolina. After Heather will be David Kuhn. Oh, Heather, you're muted.
Hello, Heather Listerman, working for the City of Glenwood Springs. I'm the urban ecologist and public spaces supervisor.
Hello.
After David will be Luke.
Hi, everyone. David Kuhn with the City of Aspen and the City Forester and some other things as well for the city. Natural resources, noxious weeds, that sort of stuff.
Cool.
Glad to be here.
Cool.
After Luke will be Molly.
Morning, my name is Luke Coyotes. I'm an arborist here in Leadville and own a small consulting company in Leadville as well.
Awesome. After Molly will be Aaron.
I'm Molly Freilisher. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
With CSU Extension out in the Tri-River area in Grand Junction. And I'm a residential horticulture and natural resources specialist working with Jeff here.
Awesome. After Aaron will be Mercedes.
Good morning, all. Aaron Stafford, project manager for the City of Steamboat Springs. Joined with our new park supervisor, Johannes Thorson, and our city forester, Maddie. There he is. So we're all here hanging out. Look forward to the second meeting today. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Aaron. After Mercedes will be Ryan.
Mercedes Siegelgaither. I am a forester down here out of the Durango Field Office for the Colorado State Forest Service.
Nice.
After Ryan will be Marilyn.
Hey, good morning, Ryan Cox, forester with the State Forest Service in Durango. Just want to take a chance to give a quick shout out to Cammie. She's been a great asset to the agency and crucial to this office, especially getting a couple of inventories initiated down here in the southwest corner. So thanks, Cammie.
Oh, shucks. Thanks, Ryan. After Marilyn will be Lisa.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Sorry, Lisa, Marilyn first and then you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine, Lisa. Good morning, all. Marilyn Moore, Slide at Tree Board.
Nice.
Thanks, Marilyn. After Lisa will be Riley.
Good morning. My name is Lisa DiNardo, horticulturist, certified arborist, working at Eagle Crest Nursery in the Tree and Shrub Department in Elgin. Glad to be here, and thank you, Cammie.
Thanks, Lisa. After Riley will be Josh.
Hi, I'm Riley, and I'm an intern with the Colorado State Forest Service, working in the Communications and Communities Division.
Awesome. Thanks, Riley. After Josh is Bryce. Oh, we can't hear you, Josh. You're not muted, but I don't know what's going on. So Josh, you're with the State Forest Service out of the Durango office? So that's Josh out of the Durango office with the State Forest Service. Yeah, Josh.
Woohoo!
Thanks, Josh. Bryce.
Hey everyone, I'm Bryce. Bryce Powell. I'm out of the Durango office as well with the State Forest Service, and I'm a new forester.
Nice. Welcome.
Well, that's, I think, everyone I see on my screen. Thank you all for the introductions. So the first presenter will be Dana Karcher with Davey Tree. We had some requests of help from the tree board in Buena Vista about the interaction between utilities and community trees. And so I reached out to Davey and Dana to present. So I figured the information she shared with Buena Vista was something we could all learn from. So I appreciate Dana being willing to present with us today. So we'll have her presentation and then time afterwards for questions. So take it away.
Thanks so much. And I do not have a slideshow. I thought that I'm kind of over Zoom slideshows right now. So I decided if I am, you might be as well. I'm going to just start with a conversation a little bit about what my background is so you know where I'm coming from. How many of you, and you can either raise your virtual hand or your real hand if your camera is showing, have worked in the utility space with in your jobs so far? Carolina, Aaron. So I've only got two. And I'm sorry, but I missed your name, Matt. Okay, awesome. So just a little bit about some background, and my utility story goes way back. So prior to working for Davey Resource Group, I managed a small nonprofit in the Central Valley of California. It was a part-time job, and I was not a certified arborist. I thought it was a great part-time job where I could, pick up my kids from school. I had no idea I would fall in love with trees and this industry, and it would take me to all places all over the world. So that's the really cool thing. But I also became the tree lady of Bakersfield, which was not always the best title in the world, because the number one phone call I got in my office in my little part-time job was PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, the largest investor-owned utility in the country, is ruining our trees. And I would go out to places and I'd look and I'd just go, oh my God, what are they doing? And well, what I learned later was what they're doing is making everything safe, right? And we, as urban foresters, sometimes see this conflict. Actually, we see this conflict a lot. And I had a gentleman who was the vegetation manager for PG&E. His name was Bob Bell. Sit me down and teach me the ways of utility forestry. Mind you, I said that this was in 2003. I still had a kid in high school, and I still had a kid in elementary school. They are long grown and long gone. So this was a long time ago. This was before big fires. This was before the outage in 2003. And this was before a lot of the things that you have seen happen now, that they were trying to clear power lines, and they were not doing a very good job of it. And they were the first to admit it. But who put those trees under the power lines? Well, it wasn't PG&E, right? But PG&E is also at fault because they don't have their power lines mapped. And so people don't know what happens when development happens and we plant trees and then the power lines may go over those trees, right? So there's a double-edged sword here. So I'll go back to a little bit to about 2003. There was a historic blackout that was caused by tree branches touching power lines. And this blackout was cut off electricity to over 50 million people in northeastern US and in one city in Canada. Anybody familiar with that blackout? If you remember that, it was a big deal. A tree limb flew into a power line. It caused, there was already a lot of high demand because of the weather in the Northeast. And this is 2003. So this is a while ago. This is 20 years ago. And as you know, things are not getting cooler, things are getting hotter, and we're in it this week here in Colorado. So there was a problem there. It was a transmission line. So does everybody know the difference between transmission lines and distribution lines? It's hard to see because not many people have their camera on. So I don't know who's shaking their head. So I'm going to give you the definition. Distribution line takes the electricity, it comes from transmission wires, and distributes it to communities. The service drops is what distributes it to your home. Okay, so transmission wires are the ones that are really big. They have big right-of-ways, and they're usually completely devoid of vegetation. In Texas, there is no vegetation underneath the transmission lines at all. In some states, there's smaller vegetation for animals and things like that, but in most cases, there are no trees. So the National Electric Regulatory Corporation and the Federal Electrical NERCenFERC, they actually developed a rule after 2003 that said anything that is near the transmission lines, the big ones, anything that is near that has to be removed. If it has the chance of falling into those lines, it must be removed. So that's transmission, right? So we're walking power lines all over Northern California. I'm working on the PG&E project there. We're looking to see what can fall in. Trees are coming out like crazy. You know, we're saving the world because of this potential for a blackout. So there's three main reasons why trees are removed near power lines. First off, trees can conduct electricity. If you are a certified arborist, you should know this, right? But if you're a child playing near a tree, near a power line, you're not going to know that. So that tree is a danger, number one. Number two is reliability. Proper clearance in Colorado is 15 to 25 feet around power lines. Lines can be affected by wind, snow, and ice here. And our weather is changing. And the utilities have to change their procedures with the weather as well. So both transmission lines and distribution lines can sag in the heat, getting closer to trees, right? And then, of course, fire mitigation. So I pulled up a couple different utilities in Colorado. La Plata was one of them. It serves Durango and Pagosa Springs. They don't want any trees within 25 feet of the power lines. They want small shrubs only. They want you to report trees growing into power lines. They don't want you to trim the trees yourself, and they want you to use tree professionals. So those are their rules that they post on their website. What causes the problems and why are utilities becoming more aware of these things? Well, high winds, and we are definitely in a windier environment, blowing branches. And then the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is utility poles can be up to 100 years old, and a distribution pole can break very easily in the wind. I think that utilities need to do a better job of monitoring their poles, but they don't. And so they have to live with what they have. And then what have we learned from PG&E, which many of you know about? Anybody here from California besides me? So yeah, we had a lot going on there. Trees in 2017, there was, a lot of fires. Trees and branches came in contact with power lines that caused those fires. There were over 55 deaths, hundreds of thousands of acres were burned, and that was in 2017. And then if you'll remember the Paradise Fire, that was the one that was up in Paradise, California. So it's a town that's like one way in, one way out, and 85 people died in that fire and 14,000 homes were burned. That's just two of the fires that were started by trees. And so all utilities, regardless of whether they're in Colorado or Montana or Texas, are all looking at what is happening around their power lines. So you may say, well, Dana, wouldn't it make more sense to underground all the utilities? Well, it makes a ton of sense to underground the utilities until you find out it costs about $1 to $5 million a mile to underground utilities. It is not a cheap thing. Both San Diego Gas and Electric and PG&E are undergrounding some of their wires in some of the most high-risk areas. It's super disruptive. I always, we've been coming to Colorado until we moved here a year ago. We've been coming to Colorado every summer, and we always laughed that we would get stuck in the traffic jams. You guys don't laugh about it like we did when we were tourists, but now I really get it. I understand why they do it, because of the weather. So can you imagine that happening not only down the middle of the road, but but on the side of the road as well, having trenching taking place and pulling through wires. It's very, very disruptive. It's very disruptive in communities. It can take out entire houses. It can take out just as many trees, because you have to take the trees out where they're, you can't go under the trees as much as we'd like to think you can, because they don't want to disturb the roots, because they don't want to have a tree failure. So undergrounding is an option, but not a very good one. There are newer insulated wires, and many, as things are changing, many utilities are going to these newer insulated wires, but they are also very costly, but not nearly as costly as underground. But the most important thing about all of that is that when a utility needs to take care of their vegetation because it's been planted under the power line, that costs money. And who ends up paying for that? You and me, we're the ratepayers, right? And in order for a rate to increase, for us to have an increased rate, they have to go to the Colorado Public Utility Commission, right? And if you go to the PUC and ask for a rate increase because you need to take care of your vegetation, 9 times out of 10, it isn't going to happen. I helped prepare a rate case in Texas for a utility there, went and testified. They were having outages like crazy. And absolutely not. We are not going to bear the burden of this on. We're not going to put the burden of this onto the ratepayers. So that's one of the biggest challenges with this. So I think that, we talk about what's the solution, and the solution is fairly simple, and it's to stop planting under power lines and stop planting within 15 feet. I've gotten a couple phone calls from the people in Buena Vista, but I didn't want to talk to, or Buena Vista, right? I have to say it right. I've gotten a couple phone calls from their tree board members. I haven't called them back because I don't feel as if I am in a good place to call them back without getting some input from those of you who work around the region and what you're hearing and what you're seeing. So I would like to open up a discussion and a time for questions so I can learn more from you and we can talk about what you see are potential solutions. Anybody? What about education? What are you doing for education in your communities about power line work and planting? Anybody doing anything?
Hello. I have puppies. So there's a lot going on right now in our area, and I look forward to hearing from other folks, specifically with clearing under power lines, right? With Steamboat, I don't know how many of you have been to Steamboat Springs or are familiar with the downtown area, but the electric lines were set up, right? Many decades ago, and trees have grown underneath them, and people love their trees and love love the covered and love the shade and love the green. And, as we're trying to do wildfire risk reduction in both YVA and WAPA are trying to do their mitigation, there's conflict here in the use in the reduction of those fuels. Route and Steamboat have also recently developed their climate action plan, where we want to preserve trees in the right place, right, to sequester carbon. So there's just a lot of conflict in overlap in what we're doing and where we're doing it. In, YVA has gotten in trouble because they've subcontracted some of this work, and they show up, cut trees down, no one knows what's going on. And so there's been a lot of a big push to get our local utility to get ahead of the work and do outreach and talk to landowners that are going to be impacted in the right of way or in their backyard to clear, again, areas under power lines. And they're trying to replace trees, right? So that's the compromise, is that they remove big trees and they're saying we're going to replant something smaller. Hopefully it won't grow as big as the conifer or the cottonwood they're removing, in mitigating in that sense, that they're bringing in another type of tree that would fit better in the place where it's growing. And then we have WAPA, which is a major transmission line that goes through Steamboat. And they've been very, very cooperative and involved with the community, getting ahead again of, people don't like to remove trees. Even if we have now the social license to do so more because of wildfire risk, it's still an issue to get to do that and clear these areas that are needed to be cleared. But so again, getting ahead of the game, getting ahead of the work, and doing that outreach that takes time and takes capacity. So I'm wondering what other folks are doing, what other local utilities are doing to minimize that conflict.
So I've got a couple things. One is you mentioned WAPA. So WAPA is a federal government utility. It is not governed locally. There's no board. There's nothing like that. It is a federal government utility. It is governed by those FERC and NERC regulations. So they don't have a choice. No one really has a choice, but they definitely don't have a choice because they're federal government. I like what you said about that they're coming in and replacing with smaller trees. But the thing is, in mitigation work, you want to I would encourage a utility to replace in a different location with larger trees, right? So away from the power lines with larger trees so that you have that opportunity to, sequester carbon. But the other thing that you mentioned about getting ahead, so many utilities have a program where they have foresters go to homes and actually knock on doors and say, we're going to, or businesses, et cetera, et cetera. The utility is fully responsible for that opportunity. They pay contractors to do that. If they don't put that in their RFP, it's not going to happen because time is money, right? And the skilled labor force for utility work is not as high as like residential commercial work. So you've got a different skill set. You may have a language barrier. And also, just so you know, most of the time, the utility is not paying anybody to do that. That's not in their contracts. The larger investor-owned utilities, PG&E, First Energy, they are actually, putting that in their contract. Encore down in Texas, that whole thing. So one of the things that you guys can do as foresters and as citizens and as ratepayers is to encourage utilities to actually have bodies that go out beforehand, and not necessarily they work for the utility, they can be a contractor as well. And there are plenty of those that do that. But they also have to put enough money in the budget to pay the people to do that as well. Just some thoughts. Thank you. Thank you. Carolina, is it Carolina or Carolina? Carolina, okay.
Hey, I could say a few things just from a town perspective. And this is probably common for the other town arborists here, but it's actually in our tree ordinance to not have trees under power lines, within a certain distance. And in Carbondale, since I've been a town arborist for about 1.5 years, I've already been removing trees under power lines that, they're kind of like V-cut, right? It's growing right under the power line, and then they cut it over the years and it's just this V. So you have this undesirable structure. And I'll tell you, I don't like to lose that shade. No one likes to lose that shade, and it's not a happy conversation to have with residents and stuff. But the reality is, they never should have been there. So We just have to kind of, as they get bigger and more risk prone, we just have to move forward, get them out of there. And in some cases, we can plant trees that are not as large stature adjacent, so you can still have some trees, but they just won't get as big. And I imagine that's common for other towns and having it in your ordinance and stuff.
It's interesting that when you talk about the pruning, this pruning, in the utility world is called directional pruning, right? And I used to travel to the office to my home office on the central coast of California, and I would pass by this house that was on a main drag, and it had a deodar cedar that was underneath the power lines, and it was cut off, and it had one branch that went out towards this house. And one day I was kind of stuck in a traffic jam going through there because everybody was going to the beach. And I pulled off and just thought, I'm going to knock on this lady's door and let her know that we can probably get that tree removed for her if she wants to. And the interesting thing was that she said to me, I don't want that tree removed because when I sit on my couch, she goes, I don't see the top cut off. I just see that beautiful big branch. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Now that tree is gone because eventually it died, but it had to be topped underneath that power line. Directional pruning is ugly. It's effective for some places, but if you have an ordinance which allows you to remove that and do some planting elsewhere, I think that's great. What else?
Aaron, you being in Steamboat, do you want to talk about your experience with power lines and trees?
Yeah, I was just talking with the team about it. We working with Yampa Valley Electric Association. Just last year, we have a very historical site, our rodeo grounds, and we had some snow crabs underneath it. And it's been a ongoing conversation with Yampa Valley Electric for the last 4 or 5 years that we had to do some directional pruning. And they came out in the middle of the summer last year and wanted to do it. And through conversations and negotiation with them, we were able to do that and have that prune later in the year. And we were able to have some kind of insight to, the techniques that they're using, a little bit more input than they originally wanted. And, all in all, there wasn't a lot that we can do, but we were happy with that communication and the end product with it. So it's happening a lot right now in this community as well as other ones. So we're all feeling it.
Aaron, that's really good. When you say you had conversations and negotiations, I think that's one of the key things. I've been working with a city in Oklahoma where they're so mad at their utility that they've sued their utility, et cetera, et cetera. But the bottom line is this utility is right. They can't have those trees under the power lines. They shouldn't have been planted under the power lines. The city planted them under the power lines, and it was a mistake. And but when I met with them, sometimes I feel like I'm the utility counselor, you need to have a conversation about this, put people in a room. Here's our goal and here's our goal. And how can we get this together? So I think that's really an important thing that you were able to really have good conversations around that and maybe save those trees and think about how they're going to be into the future and what eventually they will die. So we all know that. So how do you replace them and who does the replacement and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we had those conversations and it was very positive. Again, nobody wants to see those trees, be negatively impacted. So I think it was a really good outcome in that situation. Carolina knows the trees that I'm talking about, and so does the entire community as they were watching, work being done there. So, but all in all, it was a good experience in a not so desirable situation.
How about you, Heather, in Glenwood?
So we also, our right-of-way tree ordinance covers that. And then for our right-of-way ordinance, we require people to submit a request anytime they're planting trees. We still have a lot of older trees that are in right-of-way areas under power lines, and our electric department usually handles that. I haven't had many issues with people planting new trees in those areas. So we're pretty fortunate in that arena. Well, we already have a fairly dense canopy here in the right of way. So there's not as much space for planting.
You know, Heather, it's really great. You know, for a long time, all we saw were permits to remove. And I love the idea of permits to plant, whether you're, you know, doing it for utility purposes or whatever. I mean, I just think that permits to plant really help urban foresters guide where the trees belong. And all the work that's being done in urban forestry now with canopy studies and equity planting and all those kinds of things. I think having a little more control over that is really good. I know when I ran my nonprofit, I kind of planted any place the city said, hey, you can go plant some trees here, or you can go plant some trees here, where there was no thought or any process to it. We put trees in the ground every Saturday in the fall, you know, so I like that idea a lot. And I think that permit also helps you control, gives you that control you need over your urban forest or over your urban forest.
Yeah, it really does. That helps a lot. You know, granted, there are always folks that ignore it, but we try to keep an eye on things and at least just like reach out to people and extend a little education their way when we do see people violating that code.
Yeah, I hear you.
There, one other community we could call on is Andy in Alamosa. Andy, anything you want to add about your experiences down there?
Hi. Well, actually, what I was thinking was just like how you know, every other year we're applying for grants through Excel and the CTC, the Colorado Tree Coalition, and we're deliberately putting these smaller species under power lines. So we're getting, you know, 100% matching funds from Excel, and we're not having issues, you know, just making sure we work to put the smaller species. But to hear Dana talk about how they shouldn't be anywhere near there, I'm just kind of taking it all in and, you know, wondering if Excel maybe in the CTC will reevaluate that program, hearing, you know, maybe how things are changing. So
thanks for that, Andy.
Yeah,
I'm on the CTC board. We meet next week. I'll bring that up.
Yeah,
and
that's a
I think
good
that's
point. So
that's
Rob,
a really good point.
You get money for that too. What is, I can't remember where you have been planting trees in Junction.
So for the Excel grant that we did this year, we focused on school and park space, and it was more about, we were focusing more on shade energy savings than really the utility conflict end of things. So I got a lot of things I could say about the topic generally, but I don't know what kind of time we have left.
4 minutes.
We have 4 minutes. This is what I'll say. It's hard because I've got one past example. I don't know if you guys know the Park Hill neighborhood in Denver, but one of the highest canopy cover neighborhoods in Denver, just east of City Park. People really like the trees there. And there was a right of way that had it wasn't a transmission line, just kind of your standard primary lines, and Excel needed to drop them to maintain them. So they were under these big mature trees and had been valley pruned for them. To maintain them, they had to drop the power down like 6 or 7 feet to maintain, which just didn't work with the way those trees have been maintained. So we, worked with Excel and said, yeah, these need to go. There's nothing you can do. So Excel showed up and well, it wasn't Excel, but their contractor showed up, and they got through one tree before the neighborhood came absolutely unglued, and people were ready to chain themselves to their trees. And so that was, it's just people get really attached. And sometimes the example of, I look out my window and see a branch and I like it. I've seen people that are like, these trees block the view of this ugly thing over here, and I like that better than how the tree looks, or it blocks traffic noise, or it still shades this part of my yard. So there's that attachment to trees is just really tough. I like, we have, every city I've worked in, we've had planting permit requirements, but the use was always really, really low. Like, people just didn't do it. People don't think about it. They just plant a tree. And one of the things I remember issuing notices to people for lots of different things of, some were really, really expensive. One of the most combative ones we got were when you issued a notice of violation to tell somebody they have to remove the tree they just planted, especially when they're next to a bunch of garbage houses that are doing nothing. And then here comes the city to penalize them for what in their mind was doing a really good thing. So those are tough, but I think they're important. One piece that I think is really important in cities is I come across it here in Grand Junction sometimes, is where if you don't have somebody in the community development or planning department that has some level of understanding of landscape design, you're getting a lot of trees put out into the community where you drive by and you're like, oh, wow, that was brilliant, So not having some level of education in the planning department looking at the green infrastructure side of things can be a real loss, and you can create a lot of future problems. So Grand Junction's nice because we maintain our own street trees here. So if we have the ability to remove trees and replace trees, and people just can ask to have trees planted. But really, it's that attachment piece that's hard to the property owner. Is one of the biggest conflicts. And when you get outside of the urban area here, unless you're on the river, there's really not a lot of vegetative conflict with power lines. So I think a lot of it is driven by what people put in the ground here. So my biggest thing is trying to encourage a planning department to actually look at more than just the gray infrastructure side of what's being planned.
Thanks, Rob. All right, Dana, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you all for your good input. And I hope you learned a little bit about why there is a push for the clearance, that mostly has to do with fire and life. We want to make sure that that's the reason why trees are not planted where they shouldn't be planted. I think there were some really good comments, about conversation and negotiation. I think that's really critical. Before you flip out and chain yourself to the tree, it's good to have that conversation. Rob, I thought about when you said that about planning, Pete Smith and I, when we worked at the Arbor Day Foundation together, we used to walk by a tree that was planted underneath a pedestrian bridge. It was an ash tree underneath the pedestrian bridge. It would never get any taller than where it was. So it's important to always have urban forester fingers in every pie, I think. So I want to thank you for your time. I'm really happy to see what you guys are doing and meeting. And Cammie, thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions, Cammie's got my contact information, and I'd love to talk more. I've got some courage to call the tree board over in Buena Vista, and you've given me some good insight, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Really appreciate it.
Take care. I'm going to go now. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks. So some of you may have heard that there's been a little development in Carbondale, just a little thing found in a couple trees. Just kidding. So Carl's going to present about all the fun times he's been having since the middle of June. I think you should, if you have anything you wanted to share on the screen, Carl, I think you have the ability to share your screen. So
okay, yeah, let me
Carl.
See if I can share my screen here. Just bear with me. Okay.
All right, we see your presentation. Yes. Yep, we're good.
Okay. All right, so can everyone hear me? Okay, cool.
Yep, you're good.
Yeah, so there you go. Like one day, you're the town arborist in a small town, and a certain bug lands in your town, and then you're on the front of the Denver Post. So yeah, it's been pretty wild. I'll talk about kind of initial detection. So I actually have this middle picture is a photo of me when I worked for the city of Longmont back around 2013. EAB had hit in Boulder, and Longmont's just kind of down the road. So, we were trying to detect it in Longmont, so doing lots of sampling and stuff like that. So one of my coworkers sent me this photo, and we're shaving the limbs down, trying to find the larvae and stuff. So luckily I had some experience from back then, at least what to look for, you know, the D-shaped holes and the S-shaped galleries and stuff. So, and you know, a lot of people in the green industry already know about emerald ash borer. So it's talked about. So at least I had a little bit of that going on for myself. Just to talk about, you know, the first area that, you know, I was alerted to. So I was alerted to this certain area in Carbondale in front of the post office. And there was 4 dead ash trees. And one of our members of the tree board, Dan, he was actually over here, you know, sitting in a dentist's office on the 2nd level. And he also noticed some dieback in the top of these trees here. And, you know, he said, hey, you know, you ought to check that out. And I was like, okay, I'll check it out sometime. And then about a week later, he emailed me. He's like, yeah, you really ought to check this out. You know, it could be EAB. And I was like, okay. So I go over to the post office, check those trees out, and I see this D-shaped exit hole. And I was kind of like, is that what I'm seeing? I don't know, because usually it's lilac tree borer, you know, that's what we see around here. But I was like a little suspicious, but the trees in front of the post office, you know, that's federal property. So I'm not gonna like climb up there just yet, start cutting branches out. So I'm like, well, let's go check this other area out. It turned out last year I had done kind of a quick inventory. You know, I just kind of started just to get an assessment, and I saw some dieback kind of in this area here, and I noticed, oh, there's a little bit more dieback this year, so let's go check those out. I went over to check these trees out, and there was a lot more dead in the canopy than last year. And then I climbed up into the canopy, took some samples, took them back to the shop. I saw D-shaped exit holes, and then that's when I saw the S-shaped galleries. So now I have D-shaped exit holes, S-shaped galleries. I have a tree that's rapidly declining within, you know, a year, going from about 30% dead crown to like 75%. So this is when I really started kind of getting worried about it. And it just started this chain of events. Basically, I, you know, get on the phone, I'm trying to get a hold of Cammie and Kern Estate and Dan West. And it turns out that Cammie and Dan West, they were up in Aspen with their crews doing some other work. And they were like, yeah, well, we can come down tomorrow and, you know, check it out, confirm or deny it. And sure enough, they came down and they just started peeling the bark, and they started finding the dolts and the larvae. And there's some good pictures there. This is that picture from Wes that he took later on, which is a really cool picture. It looks like the adult's gonna like shoot out of there like a cannon, but I think he was just kind of peeking out. You know, this was like June, kind of about the last week of June. Our June here was really kind of rainy and cool this year. So I think maybe, you know, Wes, we were thinking maybe they're a little bit delayed. So they just started kind of peeking out. But so that just, this whole chain of events, it just caused for me. So I'll, you know, for today's presentation, I'm just going to talk about kind of what I've been going through and just kind of the chain of events that it has caused for us here in Carbondale. So initially detected on June 15th, confirmed by the state on June 16th. The town, you know, we put out a press release, right? So this is a big deal. So as a town, we put out our press release on the 20th. And then also I kind of realized, you know, hey, I'm just one guy in a town. You know, everybody, all the other arborists in the valley need to know about this. We need to kind of start working together from you know, now we need to start working together. So I created this Roaring Fork and Beyond EAB group. We had our first Zoom meeting on June 29th, and it's made up of other town arborists in the valley, a few of the local tree companies, and representative from the state, Cammie, was there. And we just, there's some people on this, in this group that have a lot of experience with EAB. So we were able to kind of initiate some of the common things, that are done. And so some of the initial actions are don't transport firewood, burn and collect on site. This has to do with, it's pretty much probably the only way that EAB got to Carbondale. It probably was transported, more than likely through someone having a dead tree on the front range, cutting that into firewood and deciding, oh, we're gonna go camping. Let's head out. Let's go check out the Maroon Bells or something. They load it in an RV and then they, maybe they pull downtown, get a coffee, wham, it hops off that firewood into a tree, and then it starts the process. So that's a big thing. Okay, don't transport firewood. And then we also, and it said, okay, well, let's limit the movement of infected material between May and August, because this is when the bug is active, right? So let's just try to not move any infected material right now, especially in the beginning. There are some stipulations about this. You can chip material and transport it to designated areas as long as it's 1 inch and smaller, things like that. Right now, we're just kind of staying really conservative. Another thing we had to identify was where are we going to dump, infected material, and that's like a big deal, just figuring out those points. And we identified South Canyon, which is down in Glenwood, and then the Pitkin County landfill. And, Pitkin County landfill, they have a big tub grinder, but it's actually not even working right now until August. So I don't know about South Canyon. Heather would know more, but that's why we're kind of just being really conservative right now, because it takes time to make sure we have designated areas to just drop material and reprocess it more, things like that. And then we just said, okay, any suspected EAB infections, we want people to report it to, any of the local town arborists. At this point, we're only seeing it in Carbondale. It's suspected possibly down Valley and Glenwood, but it hasn't been confirmed. So it's just in Carbondale so far. Some more current actions. So I'm working on creating a map of infected areas to be available to the public, just kind of a general map for people to be able to get online, just say, okay, this is kind of generally where it is, so people are aware. I'm also trying to work on a more specific map for tree professionals as it moves between public and private properties. I think realistically at a certain point, it'll just kind of spread so far that, maybe some of this data won't be as needed, but at least in the beginning, we can kind of help each other. And I'm trying to do this through our GIS because it seems to share well with other communities. I know a lot of us in the community use Tree Plotter. I'm using kind of the version that the state kind of helps get us, which Cammie has been helping to update it, which is great for a community like myself, where we're small, we don't have a big budget, things like that. So this is a pretty big undertaking for a small town. It's like all of a sudden have to deal with all of this stuff. And then, a big thing I'm doing right now is just gathering data on all the public ash trees in town, updating the diameter, general condition. Would it be treatable for EAB? There's different treatments. Is EAB present in the tree? And then just saying, we're going to say this is a high value ash tree? This is kind of a concept within EAB. You have to decide, what trees to treat and what trees to not treat. So that's a big thing right now. It seems that springtime is the ultimate best time to do treatments. Not that you couldn't do some at other times of the year, but when looking at treating a lot of trees in the public space, we're looking towards spring. So then that brings up this, Also, just creating opportunities for various boards and commissions and the public to learn, ask questions about EAB, and provide input for management planning. Because ultimately here soon I'll be, making a management plan. So a lot of it's right now in the beginning stages, it's kind of a public management process, to go through in Carbondale, we have a tree board and we have trustees. So we go through this process to get to a plan that's going to work for us here in Carbondale. So educating the public and contractors, creating a management plan. Another thing, I've gotten our trustees to approve getting me a chipper, which is something that I just need in general anyhow. It helps me process material way better. But for trees that, are 12-inch and smaller that I can just take care of myself and my technician can take care of, that'll really help us save cost. And we can chip it, process the material, get it to 1 inch and smaller, and boom, transport it to dump, disposal areas. So that's been a good thing that will really help us with certain EAB trees and just in general for my tree program. As far as ash trees in Carbondale public spaces, so roughly 10% of our public tree canopy is ash trees. So we have about 400 trees, parks trees, trees in the right of way, and streets trees. I'm currently updating this, so this number might change a little bit. It hasn't really been updated since 2010. And then we have some areas where that were very densely planted with ash trees. And this is probably very common in other communities. It's a popular tree during a certain period of time to plant. And I think some, landscape architects or decision makers, it was a certain aesthetic to say, oh, we want all, 40 of the same tree on this stretch of right away, or whatever, 20, and it looks great. But as we know, as tree managers, we would have preferred to have more diversity for situations like this. So as part of my management plan, I'm going to have to take a close lens on some of these places where it's very densely planted. And, we're going to have to make hard decisions about, okay, how many do we treat? Maybe we remove some, we need to look really long-term. What do we want this to look like in 10 years, and we can have kind of different phases more than likely, seems to be common. So the cost is kind of spread out. But that's going to be interesting to look at through our management plan. So I want to talk about this concept. What is a high value ash tree? Because this is like my world right now, because I'm just like checking trees out. Like I got to figure this out. I got to get this data so I can crunch it, figure out my budget. So high value ash trees. So first of all, one could say that all trees provide value in their cycle of life from seedlings to decomposition. This is true, correct. However, the complex interaction of ash trees in our urban environment with the emergence of EAB forces us to make declarations about the value of ash trees. And one of the reasons is that if we don't treat our trees, they will eventually die from EAB. Estimates are 2 to 4 years. I think realistically, it depends on what the site is like, what is the health of the tree. So this is one of those tough ones where, it forces us to make decisions about which ones we try to treat and not treat. So this is a big thing, right? As far as public management and what does what do I think? I come from, arborist background. I have certain, industry standards on what a high value ash tree is. But what does the public think a high value ash tree is too, right? We have to have this conversation and come to a certain amount of agreement. So this is a big deal right now for us in Carbondale. So some characteristics. High value ash tree, good condition, vigorously growing. So each year, you have good leaf growth. Maybe if it's a really old tree, it may not be growing quite as fast, but still in good condition. Good overall structure. Structure has to do with kind of the branching in the tree, maybe it more favorable, makes it stronger, less risk prone. Is it getting consistent irrigation? This is a really big deal for treatment. You have to have water for the treatments to work. So this is a big deal. Does it enhance the landscape? Is it valuable to the owner? Is the location and size of tree favorable for treatment options? Sometimes you may have a tree you really want to save, but because of the size of it or this or that, a certain treatment option may not fit where it is. Case in point, we have trees right downtown, street trees, that maybe some of them would take a tree injection, maybe some of them wouldn't. Maybe they only take one tree injection, but maybe not multiples because it could impact bark. And are people going to want to, spray insecticides on a bark there or do a basal drench? Some of these options, these are things that may not always align, and we have to kind of look towards the future. Is there any large trunk wounds from mowers, weed whackers, or vehicles? This is really common if you start looking at urban trees. For trunk injections and a systemic insecticide, you need intact bark for it to go up into the trees. And then some things I've seen, they say okay, if 60% live crown and no more than 40% affected by EAB, then it could take a treatment. I've seen things say 50% or 30%. I'm still kind of gathering a lot of data and kind of seeing where this is going to line up. And then so not high value characteristics, unhealthy, not vigorously growing each year, unfavorable tree structure, planted in poor sites or not as important to the landscape, causing sightline or public safety issues. This is such a common issue, I think, in any town. Just trees, plants growing in corners on this are not planted in the correct place. Speaking to Rob, this is where being a part of the planning process is so important. Like, look at those plans and say, no, don't put a tree on the corner there. No, it's just a sightline issue. Don't receive consistent irrigation. Possibly it could be suppressed by surrounding trees. This is very common. And it's showing signs of EAB or other insect infestations. We have the lilac ash borer we also have around here, and it has large trunk wounds present and more than 40% crown affected by EAB. So I have some examples here from Carbondale. So if you're familiar with Soper's Park, this is one of our ash trees in Soper's Park, pretty big. I don't remember the diameter exactly, but nice shade tree. Ask myself, is this high value? Good condition, yep. Consistent irrigation, enhances the landscape, valuable to Soper's Park. No signs of EAB yet. It's just down the block, but I don't see it yet. I would say yes, this is high value, and I feel like the community would probably agree. Okay, this is another tree in Soper's Park. Less favorable tree structure. So if you can see, it's a little bit hard to see, but we have an ash tree here next to the ditch. And if you look at the structure, you have codominant leads here, which can be more prone to risk and failure. Now, if you look on the left, we have these big Siberian elms, and it's being suppressed by these bigger trees. So it doesn't have as much limbs on that side. And it's actually growing this way, right? It's trying to find sunlight, adapt to this area. So therefore, its structure has been compromised because of where it was planted. Now, I believe when this was planted, they thought, well, we'll plant this as it's small and then remove these in the future, and it just never happened. And sometimes that happens. Now, it does get consistent irrigation, so it would take a treatment, but as I said, it's suppressed by surrounding trees. And there's no EAB yet. But ultimately for, if I'm looking 10 years, 5 years down the line, I'm just going to say, we need to look forward. Let's not treat this one. It's not the one to treat. Okay, here's another example from a street tree. Okay, so I see it. Okay, EAB's impacting the canopy. This one's dead. Starting to get a little small leaves there. Okay, so that's some of the signs. Now it has 60% live crown and no more than 40% affected by EAB. So, what am I thinking? Well, let's look down at the ground. So this tree is growing out of a really small tree grate. It's a poor site, likely not getting good irrigation. It's just been kind of struggling along for a while, which is fine. It's providing value, and that's awesome. But we're going to need water for uptake, and I think, what ability does it have even to take water with such a limited kind of root zone? Now, things I don't know, is this the suspended sidewalk? I don't know. Roots could be going under here. Sometimes, these things are built suspended sidewalks. I suspect the answer is no. But I would not choose that as a high value. So just general street tree issues with our ash trees here in Carbondale. We have our tree here on the left. This one has just been declining for years, probably related to water. And it's just been slowly declining. Not super happy. Our guy in the middle here, this is really common for street trees, is that, this grate should have been cut back years ago, and it wasn't. And now it's kind of slowly girdling the trunk of the tree. So you look at it up here, like, oh, it's a pretty nice tree. You look down here, like, oh no. Now we might be able to, cut this out, but that's how, unfortunately, it just happens a lot for street trees. Not super desirable. And then we have this one over here. It's exhibiting a leaf scorch, which is probably due to irrigation. Maybe it has early signs of EAB, but probably due to irrigation. And this is just a common thing for us in Carbondale. I believe that some of the infrastructure on our street trees in general, the water is inconsistent, and this kind of happens. So, a big thing for us in Carbondale is we need to look at our whole downtown area, because we have a lot of other linden trees. They're also doing poorly. So this is going to be interesting for us to look kind of in the long term, just in our downtown, not even related to EAB, but, thrown in the mix now. So these are kind of things to consider, for me right now in the public. What trees to focus management on? Are all trees treatable? Cost of various management actions, risk of using insecticides, when to treat trees, short versus long-term visions, EAB's effect on Carbondale and the surrounding communities. What have other towns done? What do we know is effective management? And can we stop EAB? And what can homeowners do? So I'm doing a similar presentation to this on Thursday to the tree board and various boards and commissions, so that this is really kind of geared towards that. But it gives everybody kind of a glimpse, at least, into what's happening for me here in Carbondale. But if anyone has any comments or questions, yeah, feel free.
I had a couple for you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So you said 10% of the public canopy, or about 400 trees, is how the ash composition is for there?
Yep.
How much do you expect to lose in your mind?
I don't have an accurate estimate quite yet, because I'm still updating my inventory. And probably in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to crunch all those numbers, and I'll be able to kind of see what my diameter distribution is. And also kind of, I'm saying if it's good, fair, or bad. But I think realistically, we could lose possibly 50%. I think you got to And other people have a lot more experience than I do as far as how well treatments work. But, you know, I don't know if treatments always work. So we have to kind of brace ourselves. We really need to look forward. Like, what do we want to look like, you know, years later?
And then, do you expect to use just emamectin benzoate, or are you going to experiment with other chemicals as well?
Well, that seems to be the most popular one. You know, if you look at like Fort Collins Management Plan and like City of Boulder, like that's the one they like to use, and it's tree injections. Now, other communities will use some of the other chemicals that you can use as a bark spray or a basal rinse or as a soil injection. Now, people have issues with those other chemicals because they have qualities that are proven to be not good for pollinators. So that's a point to think about and work out on what we want to do here. Of course, you know, the letter is the law, or the label is the law, right? When you're applicating. So if you do it correctly and you have applicators that know what they're doing, you can really reduce the effects to insects and pollinators, right? But that's something we have to really, as a community here, take into account. Like, what do we want to do? You know.
Well, thank you so much. It's a lot of effort for such a small community to go through.
Oh yeah, totally. Yep.
Mel, do you want to share what it takes for a, if someone thinks they have found an insect, like what it takes to confirm it?
Yeah, no problem. I'm a confirmed, I can confirm EAB as an entomologist here on the Western Slope. I work for CSU Extension. My name's Mel. I likely would additionally send that specimen, just like Dan West did, to someone else on main campus, to the CP Gillette Museum of Arthropod Diversity for second opinion, but I feel comfortable identifying this insect. But yeah, I suppose communities, extension is an amazing resource. You know, it's very smart to learn where the county extension offices are and connect to those natural resource and ag agents. And then through them, they could provide the sample to me. Ultimately, I'm happy to help on the western side of the state to confirm things, but likely ultimately I'll be sending it to campus for official confirmation, just since it's such a big deal when we have these types of county records.
Thank you. Yeah, it was pretty amazing timing that both Dan West and myself were within a 30-minute drive of Carl when he sent that email. So Dan took those samples. I mean, we felt pretty confident on site looking at the samples that it was, but we didn't want to share any information until it was 100% confirmed by the CSU guy. Go ahead, Molly.
I don't know, Cammie, if anybody on the Front Range or even here uses the EAB cost calculator that Purdue has, where you can, if you have an ash inventory, put it in there, and it's based on a model that where EAB comes in as a wave and sort of assumes like a 25-year period where you may be treating, and whether you treat, whether you do nothing or whether you remove ash. And it can be a way to sort of plan out those costs, and was developed for a lot of the Midwestern cities that have a lot of ash. So I don't know if that's something that's useful here, or Rob, if you did that in Denver, or I don't know, but it's there, it's free. You can plug in costs for, if you know how much it's gonna cost to treat per diameter inch with emamectin benzoate or whatever.
Yeah, I've already kind of played with that program a little bit, and I'm definitely going to use it once I get all my updated data.
Well, thanks, Molly. I shared that link in the chat, although it came up real easy in Google, so I bet you could find it as well.
Just to add a couple things for you, Carl, I think one thing I'd say is EAB is bad as an arborist to get it in your city, but it's also one of the best times to see growth in a program. So you say things like, I might get a chipper out of this, and my only advice would be ask for more than you think you could get, because sometimes this is the best time to get it. The other thing I would mention is also, sometimes we get fixated on, you know, this lifespan of the tree. Are we going to treat this tree forever? And I think the other piece that's critical is sometimes you treat a tree just to slow it down and not overwhelm yourself with how much you got to do. So some of these you can view as, this is long-term preservation tree treatment. We're going to treat this size class just to not overwhelm ourselves with what all has to happen at once. So maybe considering some of that's important too. I'm assuming the city's probably not going to get into like a code enforcement, you know, private property, getting rid of the infestation on private land, but that's a complicated piece too. So I don't know if the town has any interest in that or not, but those were some of my thoughts. And also just, I've got a ton of old presentations. I'd be happy to share them with you if you want to steal slides or anything like that. I've got some good stuff from Milwaukee's city forester that he used to try to kind of support, you know, why doing something matters. And he had some really good American elm slides that show aerials from like the 50s of these heavily canopy covered streets, and then them getting wiped out by Dutch elm disease. And then 50 years later, that canopy still not being back. So just trying to get people to wrap their minds around, you know, what is 50 years worth to you and the people that live here? Because yeah, you can, every city has a different strategy. And you know, I like to try to hold on to stuff if it's decent. I know most cities, it's somewhere around that 10 to 13 inch is usually where trees of value land in that kind of cost benefit, you know, type of model, but really comes down to what kind of capacity they give you. But I always, when I get into those conversations, I always like to say, we got two choices. We can either choose how we want to manage this, or we can let the bug choose how it's going to manage us. Because one way or another, a bunch of big dead standing trees don't just go away. And so you can wait for the bug to manage you, or you can try to manage it. So just let me know. I can try to share some slides.
Well, Rob, maybe it would be worth it to put those on that Google Drive that I created for the council. We could make a folder just for EAB presentations that people can access.
If you get one set up, that would help, because they're definitely picture heavy, large file size. So if there's a shared drive, I could stick them in. That would be great.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll send that info to you.
That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you, Carl. Really good to see how things are moving forward. And I know you've got that presentation or that meeting on Thursday. Mel's going to present at it as well. So thanks to Mel for being willing to go up. Brandon and I are personing our farmers market forestry board tent, so I can't make it up there. So, but plenty of folks are well-informed folks are going to be at that meeting. So they're going to record it as well, so we can share that for anyone who wants to watch that. So thank you, Carl. Really appreciate your time putting that together and presenting. The next thing oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Cami, one other thought. Another good time with this, Carl, would be to try to convince them that to understand what you need to do, you need to know the value. And that's maybe you get some funding to work with a Planet Geo to get you, you know, do a little canopy assessment and put dollars behind it. And it's another good chance to do that. Sorry, that's it.
No, thanks, Rob. Jeff, your lovely face popped up on my screen. Was there anything you wanted to share?
I was just wondering, following up with Rob there, as far as this group goes, is there some sort of concerted effort as far as messaging, or I know that we've been compiling a bunch of stuff and there's a lot of different documents out there. But if we wanted to try to put something together that was a little bit more streamlined and maybe a little bit more targeted, I guess, because there's a lot of different resources out there.
Yeah, that's been an important conversation that I've had with some of the extension folks in that Roaring Fork neck of the woods is and with Carl and the Roaring Fork team that he's pulled together is consistent messaging. And so Chris Beiser with Basalt put together a 2-pager, but during a conversation I had with the extension folks was kind of updating the FAQs there's one, yeah, it's a really nice one. I'll share that with the group. Let me make a note. BAB 2-pager. There's an FAQ that the State Forest Service put together, but it's from like 2016. And so it would be really good to get that updated. Actually, Molly sent that out to me based on, because Mel joined that extension group conversation. So I think it'd be really valuable to update it, like what questions is Carl getting, and Heather and the folks in the Roaring Fork. And I'm sure it's kind of similar with what Melissa and everyone's dealing with the Japanese beetle, the kind of questions. So I think it'd be really valuable to get that FAQ updated, just to make sure the information is relevant. But consistent messaging is definitely something we've talked about. So maybe Jeff, you can help with that.
Happy to do so. Yeah. Just let me know where I can fit in, and yeah. Would love to help.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. So then,
I mean, I just have to say, I'm a little disappointed that the Denver Post had a front page article, but the Sentinel didn't. Doesn't it seem like the Western Slope news agencies would be interested in covering this? But
you can reach out to the guy.
I'm talking to you. So.
Sorry, I'm not in Fort. I'm in Fort Collins right now. I can't.
Oh, good excuse. Okay.
So the next topic was just kind of talking about how we wanted this to be structured, this group. I don't know how. I think there's like for the Front Range Urban Forestry Council, they have a board. I don't know how involved people want to get. I kind of want to get some feedback on how you all would like to see this organized. At this point, the way it's been working is I have a core group of folks that I email to bounce ideas off of, and I've kind of been spearheading and reaching out for topics and presenters, but it would probably be, I guess it would be good to solidify a few things. Carolina brought this up at the last meeting, asking if we had thought about how to organize this. So I put some time in today's agenda just to do that. So anyone have any thoughts on suggestions on how we should organize this group as we move forward? Crickets.
I vote for Cammie as president.
Thanks, Andy.
I just want to say I appreciate your efforts, and not being a forester, I'm just learning more. So I'm hearing from the foresters how they, and you guys who are a little more directly tied to the field, however you deem best appropriate, is fine with me.
Well, I'm definitely finding value in this group, and thanks for that comment, Andy. It sounds like other folks are finding value in this. So the way that we just kind of are moving forward is that the meetings will be on the third Monday of the month, and then it was going to be 4 times a year, so once a quarter. I'm thinking it might be good to kind of move which months, because the next meeting is scheduled for October 19th, but I am in the past, Vince would host the Western Colorado Community Forestry Conference in person in October. And so then that's just 2 meetings right next to each other. So either we make the October meeting an in-person one, or we change the months so that they're not right next to each other. Any thoughts on that? Should we keep an October meeting so it would be January, April, July, October, with the October one being in person? Or because we're so diverse, do we want to bump it to a different month, like February, May, August, November? Oh, I did it. What is everyone's thoughts? On that?
I like the in-person, Cammie, for October.
Okay. I mean, it'll also be virtual if possible. It would be there'd be some kind of virtual option, which complicates it on the location a little bit, but we're getting more virtual.
Right.
Okay, so Lisa's vote is for October in person. Other thoughts?
I second that. I think that'd be a good idea for a hybrid meeting in October.
Okay, I got a thumbs up from Matt. Got some head nods. Carolina, thumbs up. Okay, so I don't know if y'all noticed. Thanks, Ryan. so I guess my next question leads into, I started using MailChimp to send out the emails. Is that working for folks? I'm really trying to not overload emails. I know how busy my inbox is. So what have you thought about MailChimp so far? I've used it twice. I mean, I've sent 2 different email batches out.
I don't know. Tammy, your email comes as just a regular email. How would I distinguish it?
Because I'm adding like photos, and it's not just text. It has like the one I sent out earlier had like the pictures of the redbud and a hawthorn. So I'm trying to make it a little more visually interesting than just a email blurb.
Absolutely. I'll follow up with you later on that, and whether I don't think I got that one.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
And what also is nice about MailChimp is that if people want to subscribe, you can forward it and they can easily subscribe. So I'm not trying to track the subscriptions. And if you want to unsubscribe, it's also easier to unsubscribe.
Okay. Great. So one has to be subscribed.
Yeah, most people got subscribed by me. I think you should be getting them. So if you're not getting them. And that's why I sent up a follow email last week, was that I was at a meeting with Brandon and Rob, and both of my MailChimp emails went to their spam folders. So I sent a follow-up email to people who hadn't opened the email, which is what's nice about MailChimp, is I can see who's opened, who hasn't. And so I sent a follow-up email to those who hadn't opened it saying, hey, check your spam box.
Okay.
So I guess I just wanted some feedback on my communication emails. Is that working for folks? Okay, cool.
I thought it looked great, and it's also coming from a different email address, so it's now easy to find instead of searching Cami where all this stuff comes up. Yeah, I'm inspired to adopt it here.
Thanks. Yeah, I had our IT people make a UCF email specific, and so that's what it's coming through now, which is nice. I agree, because then it's not just another Cami email. Maybe won't get lost. I know some people don't even open some of my emails.
Not me.
I know I was talking to I sent out a big code tree view email, and someone's like, yeah, I saw it, but I didn't open it. I was like, nice, thanks. Glad I spent so much time on that email.
No.
So I guess what I'm hearing is it's working so far with how things are going. And I'll just kind of, if you have ideas, or please, if you have a topic you want to present, I would love it if you would reach out to me. It can be any topic. It doesn't need to be 30 minutes. It can be the first presentation we did back in April. We had 4 15-minute presentations. The 2 topics today seem to warrant 30 minutes. So if there's something you want to share about what's working, what's not working, would love for anybody to give a presentation. This is a great low risk opportunity to practice presenting in front of folks as well. So if you're nervous about presenting, no one will judge you. They're just glad it's not them. So feel free to reach out with ideas. Like Carl did great today, and it was good practice for Thursday.
Carl.
I think those were so MailChimp's working. Next meeting in October will be in person. That's October 12th. In Grand Junction at the Western campus where I'm based.
Okay.
My hope is that it will be some kind of virtual or hybrid option. So far we have Mel Schreiner who will be presenting, and Bill on our Grand Junction Forestry Board is also going to present. He's with a local arborist company. He reached out to me. So if anyone wants to do a presentation at, it can be like, I'm pretty open. This will be our 30th anniversary, 30th Western Colorado Urban Forestry Conference. It hasn't happened since 2019 because something happened in 2020 that stopped us from having in-person meetings. So this is our first one back. So if anyone wants to present or has an idea, I know I've got a list of ideas that people have shared, but if there's some burning thing that you really want to present or have presented, let me know. But those are the two people so far that have asked, or I've asked to present. So October 12th in Grand Junction. I guess one other question I wanted to ask was, like, has anyone accessed that Google Drive to get some of the documents? Okay, like I was saying, I put the presentations from the April meeting in there, and then like I get all these funding opportunities from different organizations, and I just, one, I don't have time to send out an email, and two, I don't want to fill people's inboxes. So I was thinking as an option would be to create a document in that Google Drive where I could put funding opportunities that have come across my desk. And then if you are wondering about them, you could go to that document and see if there's anything in there. What do you think of that idea? Or do you have a suggestion, or would you just like me to send them to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Maybe if we put it in the spreadsheet form, and then we could like filter it based on the kinds of opportunities there are.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Heather.
And would you mind sharing that Drive link with us in the chat again?
Yeah. Yep. If you are able to find one of the last, it's one of the last emails I sent. I did link to both the YouTube and the Google Drive in one of those emails I sent, but I will send that out again. I was trying to get crafty with my MailChimp links. so it'd be good to know if that worked or not. But yeah, that's a great idea, the spreadsheet. Okay.
Cammy, I went in and just created a folder called shared presentations in the Google Drive. And Carl, I just dropped that. That's a presentation I did for Colorado Park and Rec Association back in 2018. So just my apologies for all the Denver banners on the slides. So.
Yay, Heather, thank you. And Carl, if you could either load it into that drive, yours that you just did, or send it to me and I can load it, whatever's easier. But I think folks will like to have access to your presentation. That was really great. I liked how you talked about like what is a high value tree. I thought that was really helpful.
Yeah, I think, Melissa's going to be there and go deeper into other stuff. And then Chris Beiser's also going to go really deep into stuff. But just to start off, I think that's a good concept, for everyone to think about.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. The next section that we have set aside here is for just the roundtable where people can go around and share. And since I'm talking, I'll just share with what I had wanted to share with you all. One is that if you signed up gave me your ISA certified arborist number, you will get one CEU for that, the two presentations. So we'll get one CEU out of this meeting. So if you didn't get me your certified arborist number when you registered, and that's why I'm doing the registration, is because then you can submit your certified arborist number and I'm not asking everybody and then copying all that information. So it seemed to be a really easy way to capture that information. So if you didn't get that submitted, or like for Aaron, when you had two other people with you, if you want to send me their information, or if you have other people in your room that I don't know about and they're certified arborists, just shoot me over that information and I'll get it added. The second thing that I wanted to share was Co-TreeView. Carl mentioned it. Co-TreeView is hosted by Planet Geo and is based on their tree plotter software. And for the past 10 years, the Co-TreeView has had two separate sections to it. One was called tree collections, and that was more, the definition kind of is not great because it didn't make sense to have two separate data collection points. So we have combined them. So there's just one Co-TreeView. There's tree collections no longer exists. All tree data will be collected using Co-TreeView. This program is sponsored by the Colorado State Forest Service and the Colorado Tree Coalition. And for the past 10 years, it's been very basic. Basically the tree species, the DBH, the condition, and if it was a high value ash. I thought it could be so much more because I've used the tree plotter software, especially in Aspen, and it's a great software, inventory software. So I've worked with Planet Geo and we have updated Co-Tree View to be a true community tree inventory, tree collections software, where you can all management, insects, condition, placement. There's also a tree risk. If you're track qualified, you can do a tree risk section. Not that I'm going to come and check you if you're doing tree risk. It's up to you to decide if you're going to do tree risk or not. But it's a full inventory system now, and it's free for communities to use. It's still in the kind of a basic form, because if you want all this fancy bells and whistles, we want you to work with with Planet Geo to work with their bigger, fancier systems. But for as a basic use, like what Carl's doing, finding out where all of his ash are, or if you have an arboretum, so it may, or it could be a tree collection, like an arboretum or something. It doesn't have to be a whole community, but you have to create an account, which I approve, and then you're good to go with collecting data. So if you don't have an account, I'll throw the website in the chat. And I hope you make an account and start giving it a try, and give me feedback. I want to pick Carl's brain on how it's working with his EAB tracking. So those were my roundtable updates. So who wants to go next? Don't make me pick on you.
Well, I will just go ahead and say that as far as our emerald ash borer update here, we have been going through the 800 ash trees that we've identified in our right-of-way areas. And so far, we have not located any emerald ash borer so far. Granted, we've only been through a very small percentage of them. We have seen a significant amount of lilac ash borer. It is very prevalent in most of our ash trees. But so far, none of the little green menace. So just for our surrounding communities, wanted to share that pertinent info.
Heather, are you seeing any ash bark beetles? Like, that's what's our main menace in Grand Junction, is the ash bark beetle. Are you seeing that in significant amounts in Glenwood?
Yes, but I would say less than lilac ash.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for the update. I mean, I'm happy, and I'm very happy to hear that.
Yes. Only time will tell.
Luke, you're new, Leadville. Happy to have someone from Leadville. Would you like to, how's it going up there?
Yeah, it's going good in Leadville. There's not much tree diversity here. We don't actually have any ash trees in town, so very little to report on that front.
We've tried to reach out to like Leadville for funding opportunities and stuff. Is there anyone on staff that would be interested in joining this group? Do you work with the town at all?
I've tried to reach out to the town a few times. There's no tree board and there's not much of an interest in starting one so far, but maybe we can keep trying a little bit with them.
Okay, well, let us know, or let me know how I can help.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, Cammie, Luke and I have actually been in contact before about Lake County and Leadville, and it's really hard to get a hold of anybody from the city. And I think we've been in efforts for a couple of years now. And one of the previous foresters, Meg, had some contacts, but those documents are MIA. So if you find anything in your files of previous contacts.
Okay.
Well,
I could provide a quick update from the city of Aspen.
Great.
So a couple of things that are kind of maybe of importance. Keep an eye out in your community for planting new ash trees. I got an interesting call from somebody with the local transportation authority with the county. I was working with RAFTA for the Brush Creek Park and Ride parking lot redo. And she told me that, hey, I saw the PSA about the emerald ash borer a couple of weeks ago. This was about a week or two ago. And she said, so I just wanted to reach out because I'm trying to figure out if we should plant these 70 some odd green ash trees in this parking lot. And I said, well, yeah, I'm glad you called because I would definitely recommend not planting all green ash in your parking lot. And this is kind of a mid-upper valley area where I could definitely see, you know, like in terms of, you know, as EAB, you know, presumably is going to be moving in and around the valley, that could be a kind of a jumping point, right, to get up to Aspen. So, and then there's all the other issues too, right, of planting this big monoculture and then them being, you know, North American ash species. So, so that was kind of great. I think that was a really good catch. I mean, they were about to order these trees and have them shipped to the site to plant within a couple of weeks. So there you go, some fruit from the PSA immediately in terms of planting. So that's pretty good news. Caught that. So recommending, you know, 3 or 4 different varieties of trees there, none of them being fraxinus, obviously. So that's one update. Another update is, well, we're working on so for Aspen, what's interesting for us is we're a pretty high elevation, kind of like Luke, not as high as Luke in Leadville there, but trying to figure out kind of what to expect and how in our community to anticipate the eventual arrival of EAB and how it might spread. I was talking with Alex with Earthwise Horticultural, and he cited some information about EAB's life cycle and its ability to complete life cycles when there's only certain certain daytime temperatures. I forget what the numbers are, but so I'm trying to figure out what our management plan is too. I know, kind of like Carl, it's like, unfortunately, this all came about in our busiest season of the year. So it's rough, you know, we're all scrambling a little bit to try to figure out what to do. So I think, you know, having Chris and Carl and just Cammie and just the whole team, you know, providing these resources and you know, to kind of push forward this concerted effort is really valuable for everybody right now. So that's really much appreciated. But just in terms of Aspen, we are, you know, that's something I'm trying to kind of get that initial, at least an initial, you know, scouting and response phase put together for what we're, you know, what we need to do. No, I've been scouting and I've not seen or heard of any EAB in town as of yet. One other pest update is that we have cottonwood leaf beetle was pretty big the past couple of seasons, and I've been kind of looking around for that this season. Speaking with Jim Kravitz with ACES, which is Aspen Center for Environmental Studies, they had actually sent in some samples to CSU Extension to try to ID some larvae from cottonwood leaf beetle. And it turns out we're not sure, or they're not sure, that it is cottonwood leaf beetle. We think it might be a introduced leaf beetle called willow leaf beetle. So as soon as I get more information on that, I'll let the group know, but that could have some implications in terms of what sort of impacts we're seeing to cottonwoods and willows in the valley. This could be a new pest that's not our native cottonwood leaf beetle. So unfortunately, it's clear as mud right now what it is. It's, like I said, CSU Extension was not able to positively ID it, but the larva really looks a lot like this European kind of Eurasian willow leaf beetle that does attack poppers. So anyway, I think that's more on that. I'm happy to share anything if I get any more information on what exactly it is, but
yeah,
kind of monitoring this year to see what you know, how our cottonwoods, we have a lot of cottonwoods in our inventory, and our urban trees are made up of a lot of narrowleaf cottonwoods, so it's pretty important for us. So happy to share once the time comes.
Cool. I saw Chris turned his camera on. He's out and about.
I'm actually out in the field helping to set up our Wednesday concert series. So I'm sitting on our new band shell right now. If it's a little windy and loud, I'm sorry, but Dave, yeah, I did want to. It is something I'm going to be covering in the talks that we're doing tomorrow at the Carbondale Town Hall tree board meeting. But I suspect that there's going to be a lot of unknown and a lot of kind of moving target factors with how this EAB spreads in the valley. Unlike what I think a lot of urban communities up until this point have dealt with, where you're looking at places like Denver or even somewhere like Chicago, where 30% of the native tree cover is ash tree. We don't really have that here. It's not a native tree to the valley. The only ashes that really exist are in managed landscape communities. So it's really going to be figuring out how quickly it's jumping between those communities. It's not going to be something that we're going to watch an obvious, clear progression year after year moving up the valley. I have a feeling that it may even get kind of quiet for a while, especially if we can convince a lot of residents to jump on free treatments. And then it may just be where we're going to be dealing with outbreaks here and there. And frankly, it could be one of the first scenarios where we actually see eradication of it in certain areas, because the pressure is going to be a little bit more varied compared to a typical urban community. I preface that with, I don't really like to say that out loud too much to anybody that doesn't understand the nuances of that statement, because I'm preferring and am favoring in this talk, we should prepare for the worst and hope for the best sort of situation. I think I'm weary of, and I spoke actually with Jason with Aspen Tree Service yesterday about this, and he was really gung-ho on saying how he doesn't think it's going to be a big deal. And I've had to kind of talk him off the ledge of, you really shouldn't be telling your clients that it's not going to be a big deal, and because we really need people to be prepared and thinking that it's going to be, this huge outbreak like it has historically everywhere else. And then, count our blessings if it doesn't end up being that way. But I've done an evaluation on every ash tree, all the publicly owned ones in basalt. We don't have it yet here. We do have some remnants of lilac borer, a lot of scale issues. And then, I've been getting calls occasionally from homeowners, which I really enjoy. So the word is getting out to private residents, and I am getting calls about suspicions. So far, most of them have been pretty obviously not EAB, but they're just concerned because their ash has some sort of decline in it. Actually, I got a call from Lisa DiNardo, who works with Eagle Crest, had a client that had a pretty bad shape ash tree in Blue Lake, that one of our less experienced tree care companies pretty much told them definitively they have EAB. And we had to go out there and kind of walk that statement back a little bit. So that's going to be another topic of mine, is really making sure that the tree care companies in this valley understand how to identify it. And if they're not confident in identifying it, being comfortable with calling somebody who does know how to identify it. Primarily the municipal arborists, as well as then possibly getting what we would call like a preferred list of tree care companies that have been trained in both the identification of it, as well as the treatments, which is going to be another big topic about making sure that if you are paying for a treatment, that we're not just hiring what's going to be an onslaught of pop-up companies that really don't have any business being in the industry, but are looking for that quick moneymaker scheme. It happens all the time. I saw it in Chicago. I saw it in Denver. I saw it in Michigan. There are tree care companies that will pop up overnight that literally have an old school pickup that says nothing but EAB removals and treatments on the side. So we do need to just kind of educate the public on making sure they're vetting whoever is taking care of their trees, and making sure that they're in communication with us and staying in the loop on where we're seeing these outbreaks. Because like I said, I'm actually not recommending to anybody at the moment to start preventatively treating their trees unless it's a incredibly high value ash that they could not stand to lose. Simply because we just don't have it in basalt or aspen or even Glenwood at this point. And it's really going to be once we start seeing it spread beyond that initial spot in Carbondale that I'll be pushing for everybody should be preventatively treating. I'll probably be singing the tune of, if you can afford it, great. There's no harm in preventatively treating a tree, but if you're on the fence because your budget's tight, you're better off actively monitoring your tree and being ready to call somebody and having a plan in place if and when you do see symptoms show up. And so that's going to be some of the bigger topic points of tomorrow's presentation I've got going on.
Cool.
Other than that, I do have some more information about, I know there's been some interest in biocontrol conversations. So I will be covering that a little bit. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of what consumers can do on their end for biocontrols, but there are a lot of efforts with the USDA in identifying some new parasitic wasps and things like that. But it's really going to be something that I'll probably be pushing for us as municipal arborists to reach out to the government agencies, the science institutions that are doing this, as listing Scoring Fork as a potential release spot for them to study some of these emerging parasitic wasps that they're finding, that they're bringing over from EAB's native area in China to release in North America. That's about it for me, unless anybody had questions for me.
Yeah, Chris, this is Lisa. That's great information. So here at the nursery, Eagle Crest Nursery, we do have customers coming in. It would be wonderful to have a referral list of contractors. So even though we're on the slow of seeing it, granted, Carl and Carbondale, you're definitely seeing an uptick there, but let's really generate that list, because that would be wonderful to have for both the community foresters, but then Eagle Crest could also disseminate that information.
For sure, and that's a big part of the talk. My talk is really emphasizing making sure everybody's in the loop and leaning on a lot of our private sector to help with that gap that often exists between municipalities and private citizens, where they don't often feel comfortable calling a town for a private issue, but they do feel comfortable going to their tree service guy, or you, Lisa, at Eagle Crest. Everybody sees you all as experts as well. So making sure you all are helping us to kind of circulate that information and keep everybody in the loop, as well as then the flip side of you guys letting us know what you're seeing in the field. I really appreciate when you give me calls when there's some suspicious trees to take a look at. Because there are, there's only my reach in basalt only goes so far from a municipal perspective, but I'm happy to travel pretty much anywhere in the valley to look at suspicious trees if it comes to it. I'd rather volunteer my time to make sure that we know anywhere it's being popped up than kind of throw my hands in the air and say, no, it's outside of basalt, it's not my issue, sort of a attitude.
No, but I love it. That's wonderful. Just one last thing, and that is we get customers literally from out of the valley, but definitely within the valley, and literally from Aspen to Glenwood. So if I hear of anything, I will definitely contact you and your town, whomever, where you're from. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's another great point. Is it's not just me. I think every municipal arborist at this point is good at identifying the signs and the symptoms of this. So making sure you're reaching out to the appropriate contact depending on where they are in the valley really is help kind of spread the workload, so to speak.
Absolutely.
All right, I've got to go, guys. Unless you have any other questions, I gotta hop back into this concert setup.
Thanks, Chris.
No questions for you, but Lisa, I wanted to just let you know that Chris actually put together a brochure for the Roaring Fork Valley specifically, and it has contact information for all of the municipal arborists in the valley. And really great information on emerald ash borer. So if you want, I could send you the PDF files for that if you want to print out a few copies for the nursery.
I would love that. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Chris. Carolina?
Yeah, I just wanted to share a tiny little bit. Even though we haven't seen or heard anything happening in Steamboat, I have heard from many, many landowners that are being reached out by tree service companies that want to get ahead and even identify if people have ash trees and start monitoring for the ash borer. As Chris and others have said, we don't have the population of trees in our communities to really make it a big concern. Here in Steamboat, we have a few trees on the west side of town and then a few trees on the mountain side that were planted in the 80s. So there isn't that continuity. Still, I feel like there's an opportunity for that messaging so that people are not tricked into paying for services they don't need. And I'd be curious I would hope some of the communities around Carbondale and that valley could share some of that information so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel on what we're sharing with our communities. So that, yeah, we're not being overly charged or worried about EAB in some of these isolated communities.
Yeah, that's great, Carolina. I'll get I have the PDF doc, but I'll get from Chris or Carl the Word doc that they use to create. So then if you wanted to make any adjustments for your specific area, you can. And then I'll work with Jeff and some other folks in getting that fact sheet put together. So then we can be handing that out so they know when to start considering treatments. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Andy, I saw that you had unmuted a little bit ago. Did you want to share an update for your community?
Yeah, sure. You know, we started a street tree cost share program a few years ago, and it started out very slow. Only a handful of people took advantage, where the city would pay $100 toward a tree up to 50%. This last year, we adjusted that slightly to pay up to $250, up to 75%. And we still, this year, so year one, I think we had 2 or 3. Now we're year 3. We had 10 people participate. So just plugging away, and you know, it's a slow process, but as we continue to evolve our marketing on it, it's nice to see even that slow progress as people get more educated and put it in water bills and use social media and this or that. So that's the Alamosa update.
That's awesome. Do you provide like a list of recommended tree species, or what kind of information do you provide your community?
We do. You know, we had a website that was kind of privately maintained by an enthusiast, alamosatrees.net, but now we just have a little brochure with recommended planting methods, and a committee, the tree board obviously approves location. They do a little drawing for us on the application. They indicate species, you know, assuming the local nurseries have it. And then Adam, our local forester, kind of, you know, he has a lot of input on it. But yeah, the tree board approves species, and it's kind of fun to be a part of that.
Cool. Thanks, Andy. That's great news to hear that's going well. Rob, sorry.
Cami, can I get control to share something
sure.
on the screen? So I was just one of the nice things about Grand Junction is we essentially started an EAB control program before it's here. And I think that seems a little odd, but I was going to show you guys just some examples and tell me.
You should be good. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys see this? So these are just some examples of what ash bark beetle is doing around town. So this is on Orchard, and just you can see the progression of the damage on these trees. Of course, this
is ash bark beetle.
Yeah, or whatever type of bark beetle this may be someday. It's far more aggressive than anything I've ever seen. And this is a shot on 7th where you can see the progression of the damage, and then now the street looks like that. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is if you look at our canopy data, and we break this down by census block groups and canopy percentage, and then if we say, show me canopy change from 2019 to 2021, and we zoom into the core of the town, you can see anything in yellow or brown are places where in the last 3 years canopies declined. So big picture, we've got an insect here that's doing enough of an impact on our city where if EAB does show up, it's going to be I feel like we're in a good place to unfortunately be ready for it ahead because of this bug. That's what I was going to share.
Yeah, thank you. So this is some of the upgraded cool stuff you can get through that tree plotter, Planet Geo stuff and then that's Carl, what Rob mentioned about figuring more about your urban canopy. So kind of cool stuff. You can get really geeked out on that stuff. Anyone have something they want to share in less than 1 minute? Molly, nope, you just moved on my screen. All right, well, thank you everyone for an excellent meeting. Really appreciate everyone's conversation and attendance. The next meeting will then be in person in Grand Junction, October 12th, which is a Thursday. There is a in-person fee because it includes lunch. I will start working on that and share more information as I put it together. And again, if you want to present, even if it's small, please let me know. All right, what's today? Thursday? Wednesday. Happy Wednesday.
Amy, thank you for all you do.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. Appreciate it. Take care, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Cami.
Bye.